You are listening to Healing with Haley, episode 27, How to Say No and to Stop People Pleasing. Welcome to the podcast where it's all about healing, self-improvement, our brains, and living your dream life. My name is Haley Kirk, and I'm a life coach, mom, and entrepreneur here to show you how to be the hero of your story. Welcome, you guys. I have had an amazing weekend. I went to the Summit of Greatness by Lewis Howes, and I just feel so edified and exhausted at the same time. I really am amazed at the amazing phenomenon where you are in the same room of people who think, act, feel, do similar things to what you do. It's so invigorating and it's so enjoyable. I want to continue to do those things because I feel amped. I feel like I've paved a trajectory for the next few months for myself. I had set a goal to have 50 podcasts by the end of the year, and I love the progress I've made and everything I've learned from building a podcast. And I know the only metric to really look at is podcast downloads on a podcast. And my numbers are continuing to increase. They go up and down all the time, like everything. But I know that the more I do it, the more I'm going to improve and just keep going, keep on a trekking. So I wanted to talk about something I learned on this trip that wasn't really from a speaker. It was a few experiences that led to this podcast episode. So I don't know about y'all, but I am a recovering people pleaser to the T. I also continue to see ways in which I people please, even by my smile. I notice even just by smiling, I'm people pleasing or other things. So I want to share an experience with you. I was talking to one of my friends and told her about some experiences, but then the one I want to share publicly is I was like, yeah, when people want to touch my son, right, I'll put my body in front of them to block them between my son. And my friend pointed out, she was like, Haley, you're not using your voice, you're using your body. And in that moment I had this epiphany. I was like, oh my God, I'm not using my voice to say, please don't touch my son. I don't want you to touch my son. I'm not comfortable with you touching my son. Please don't touch my son. And it's crazy the things that so Byron Katie's one of my favorite authors, and she often will say this: God, if I had a prayer, it would be this: God, spare me from the desire of love, approval, and appreciation. Amen. And it's amazing the things that we do seeking those three things. I want people to approve of me. I want people to think I'm nice. I want people to think I'm enjoyable, cool, fun, sweet. I want people to think all these things about me. And it's crazy how I can't even say it to. And these are people in my neighborhood or at the gym, at the grocery store, and I know that it's just when you see a dog, you want to touch it, or it's just something so cute, right? And you just can't help but want to touch it. I get it. I get why they're doing it. But me personally, I don't want you touching my child. It's just makes me really uncomfortable. I'm very protective of him. And my friend was like, yeah, you're putting your body, by you putting your body in between them. I'll forget. I even remember this one time I was, rolling down, using the stroller, strolling down the neighborhood, and this lady comes out. She's being super friendly, and I could tell she was going to walk right up to my son. And so I positioned the stroller to be behind me. And so she's walking up the sidewalk, and I'm she's trying to walk past me to get to Israel, and I keep shifting my body to be in front. It was this weird dance. I was going it was clockwise, like spinning in like a half circle so that she wouldn't touch him. And I'm just like, I could have just said, hey, I really prefer if you didn't touch my, no, not even that. See, do you guys see the struggle? Hey, I don't want you to touch my son. I'm happy that you're, being friendly and saying hi, but I don't feel comfortable with people. I don't really know. With just people. I just struggle with people not touching him. I don't want people to touch him. And this is so funny because even in boundaries, we don't have to say why, right? We don't. It's just no. No is no. And I struggle with this, you guys. I really, really struggle with this. And I notice even in my boundaries, when I'm saying them, I get really upset. Like, I get angry, I get frustrated, I get impatient. I have this, it feels like it's like urgency and this like tightness in my throat and my chest. And like, I'm just like, oh, like, why don't you just read my mind and like my body language and nah. So it's so funny how much I feel this discomfort when I feel a boundary being like pushed or bended, and my reaction is very uncomfortable and awkward. And so I'm really passionate about this topic. And some things happened this weekend that were similar to that, where I was like using my body to say no instead of using my voice to say no. And so I think I want to share a few things. I want to share some studies, some books, some really interesting things. So the definition of people pleasing is often a subconscious behavior rooted in the desire to be liked or to avoid discomfort. So these are like actions we're taking, right? Dr. Harriet Breaker, a psychologist who wrote The Disease to Please, found that people pleasers derive their self-worth from external validation and often experience stress and resentment as a result. One of my favorite books called Boundaries, he opens his book with a story about this woman and how she, struggled with boundaries pretty much in everyday life. And I love the story of her life, like from the moment she wakes up in the morning till she closes her eyes at night. He kind of recants her story as a people pleaser, and then at the end of the book, he recants her story as a healed people pleaser, and everything that follows after that. And it's just such a non-resentful way to live. I actually think I should just read this book all over again because I'm forgetting. Research from a 2012 study by Finkel and Fitzsimmons says that the study highlights how people-pleasing tendencies often lead to emotional exhaustion and weakened relationships. So a lot of times when I find myself, the easiest way I know I'm people-pleasing is I'm doing something I don't want to do because of another person, because of how they want them to see me or how I want them to feel. So I'm almost like sacrificing my wants, my feelings, my desires for that other person. Now, there is a difference, right, between like people pleasing and like doing something you don't want to do, but you're doing it in the want because you love that person, right? It's hard to distinguish. For example, let's say your partner likes to, I don't know, eat shrimp and you don't, right? But for their birthday, you make them like a shrimp scampi. That's not people pleasing, right? You wanted to do something special for that person and that's something they like and enjoy. Now, if, for example, they asked you on a daily basis, like, hey, can you make sure to cook me shrimp? And you say yes, when inside you're saying, hell no, that's people pleasing. You see the difference? So it's giving in resentment, giving resentfully. Inside you're saying no, but outside of yourself you're saying yes. And the stress, right? The stress comes from this like desire to be liked, to be appreciated, to be loved and approved of. And it's so funny because it's all in imagination land, right? Like, I'll never forget. So if you guys are familiar with a show called Modern Family, it's hilarious. I love it. But the mom of, it's like the traditional family example in Modern Families. I can't remember the mom's name, but she said that she volunteered to bake cookies for this bake sale. And then the husband's like, well, why didn't you just say no? And then she was like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't say no, because then she'll think this of me. And I was like, people pleaser moment, right? And so now that's stressing her out and her family out, because she has to bake these cookies because of what this woman will think of her. And let's say she bakes those cookies. Who's to say that's going to change what she thinks of her? There's no way to know for sure that that's true. That doing whatever they say will actually make them like you less or more, right? Or approve of you more. There's no way to really know, right? And here's the thing. This is the kicker. People can tell you whatever they'll tell you, but who's to say that's really true? We can't really know what is true or what people are really thinking. There's no way. There's no way. They could be telling us lies. We don't know. There's no way to know for sure. And so it's all assumption, imagination land. And the easiest way to go about all of this is living in your integrity. If you don't want to do something, then say no. Oftentimes what I've been good at doing recently is saying no at first to a lot of requests. And then I'll say yes. I'll be like, you know what? Actually, I changed my mind. I want to do it. And then that way it's helping me to practice saying no. But if that doesn't work for you, that strategy, feel free. But it's empowering to know I can say no, right? Or like that's just like my default answer, because I tend to say a lot of yeses. And a lot of times what else has helped me as a tool as far as people pleasing is I'll say, let me get back to you on that. Like, I'm going to think about that and I'll get back to you. And I'll ask questions. If someone asks me if I want to do something, I'll like ask questions and I'll be like, yeah, like, let me get back to you on that. And then I kind of like think it over emotionally, like and I ask myself, like, is this something I want to do? Kind of, maybe. If I have that kind of answer, I'm like, okay, what is going to be asked of me to get this done, right? Like, what do I need to do? Like, what kind of energy? Is this something that's easy? Like, is this something doable? And so another question I like to ask is like, is this going to benefit me in the long run? And it's so interesting asking that question because it helps the people pleaser in me, like, go back to me instead of back to them. So some cultural factors I want to talk about when it comes to people pleasing is that it is kind of interesting that women in particular are often socialized to be more accommodating, which leads to more struggles when saying no. And I don't have any... okay, let's exit that out. I don't want to talk about that. Okay, so there's also this research done by Susan Newman. She's a PhD, a social psychologist, and what she kind of found out was that the pressure to say yes contributes to stress and negatively impacts well-being, and how the emotional impact of not using your voice can play like a mental toll, including anxiety, burnout, and lack of fulfillment. And it's really easy to get burnt out because I feel like burnout comes from a place of almost like saying yes to everything and everyone but yourself. And I know, like, when I was doing my social work studies way back when, that was something they talked about a lot. And I think, like, as social workers, you're constantly thinking about the people you're serving, and it can kind of be all consuming. But if that's why I think having a regular routine of exercise, because that's constantly saying yes to you, whether you're a mom or working or both. I think that exercise is just it's a yes to you and your body and your health. And it just separates you from the world. And it's such a great place to just build who you are and take care of you. So the long-term effects of, people pleasing or not using your voice, when you're consistently saying yes, when you want to say no, it erodes self-respect and can harm personal and professional relationships How true is that? This weekend, David Goggins was one of the speakers, and absolutely loved his book, Can't Hurt Me. And he just has this mindset of like a monster. And he was talking about how he turned down this like $5 million deal for someone to have him be like a brand ambassador for shoes. And he's like, listen, like, I don't want to be swayed by money. Like, I don't want someone to take my voice. And he was like, the greatest asset I have is the person I've created. And I was like, wow. Like, he's just someone to me, like an example of someone who like does not people please at all. Like, at all. And he doesn't even please like himself. Like, he kind of has this mantra of like seek pain, like, but like good pain every day, like pain that builds you up, like exercise, work on your business, like something that's like uncomfortable, like seek that discomfort that's going to get you to the next level. And I think that is so beautiful, because where does self-respect come from, right? There's almost like this, your brain is constantly seeking evidence to reaffirm belief systems, right? So if you say something like, oh, well, I didn't really want to say yes, but I ended up saying yes, so it's okay, I don't really matter. That dialogue is so easy to believe. There's a 2020 study from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships that found that suppressing your true desires can lead to increased dissatisfaction in relationships and reduce authenticity. So with these research studies, they're kind of is reiterating the same thing, right? So it harms your relationships is the consensus, right? Like when you people please over and over and over again, it's not good. One, because you're not being honest. You're not telling the truth. Two, you're going to show up in one way or another resentfully, non-verbally or verbally, right? And people can sense that, right? It's interesting how good of actors we think we are when we're terrible actors. We are terrible actors. People can see, feel everything that we are, and everything we feel and do comes from our thoughts, right? Like, I shouldn't have to bake these cookies because, like, I don't know why I said yes, and I want her to believe these things. And it's just interesting how much that can affect our relationships in a way that we don't even realize. And why we struggle to say no, a few reasons. Fear of disappointment, right? We've kind of talked about that. We often fear others' negative reactions if we say no, or how this rooted in a need for acceptance. Again, right? Their reaction to you saying no is not your business. That's the greatest golden nugget I've ever received. Whatever people's reactions to your no, it's not your business. And if they react in a poor way, that's a good indicator of someone you might want to maybe take a break from, distance from for a time. I know that when I've distanced myself in the past from people who were not showing up in ways that I found to be healthy for me, it really served the relationship very well. And people who are healthy and good for you will be honest. Will, right? Or they won't, right? Or a majority of the time they'll be honest with you. And we're human beings and we make mistakes, but I think that people that respect our boundaries and respect our no's are the people that we want in our lives, right? And I don't like saying should. People should do this, should do that. No, people are going to do what they're going to do. And based off of what they do, you make those decisions, right? Oh, this person had a really extreme reaction to this boundary. Is this something to consider for, whether or not I want them in my life or not? And I often don't think, like, it's very situational, right? If you have a friend who's been your friend for like over 10 years and something comes up like that, I don't think that would be wise to just take a break. But sometimes breaks are good. Sometimes breaks are good, even when you've had a long relationship. A lot of times it's interesting to like play out worst case scenarios, right? I really love doing this in my own coaching business. So I'll tell a client, they'll be like, oh, like I'm so afraid to tell them this because they'll stop being my friend. Okay, so play out that scenario, right? Okay, so they won't be your friend anymore. Then what? Well, then I'll miss them. Okay, well, then what? Then I'll really want to get back together as friends with them. Okay, well, then what? Well, then what if they reject me and say they don't want to be my friend? Well, okay, well, then what? Well, then I'll feel rejected if they say no. Okay, well, then what? So it's just so interesting that really the worst case scenario isn't all that bad, right? And it's kind of this, like, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book, Goliath, and it's such an interesting concept of how, and he kind of breaks down Goliath and how he had this probably, I think it was giantism. It's probably a fancier word than that, but essentially he had this disease where he couldn't really see well. He was so big that it caused him blindness because he was growing so big. And it kind of gives some evidences of that and how shepherds back in the day were really good at like slingshots, and slingshots were like bullets. So David actually was really well equipped to handle Goliath. And we're a lot stronger than we think we are, and our enemy, quote unquote, is a lot weaker than we think, or not as Goliath as they may appear. So I really like to play that out in my worst scenarios. So, okay, if this person asks me this thing and I tell them no, what's the worst thing that will happen? Okay, well then, they'll get mad. Okay, well then what? Well, then it will be really awkward and uncomfortable. Okay, well then what? Well, then I don't know if we'll be friends anymore. Okay, well then what? Well, I guess I could find new friends, but that's uncomfortable. Okay, well then what? So it just kind of goes back to like this discomfort. And a lot of times I think people pleasing is a way to avoid discomfort with other people, but then you end up being stuck with all that discomfort. So interesting. Okay, another reason we struggle to say no is a loss of identity. How consistently going along with others' wishes can lead to losing sight of your own needs, preferences, and voice. Oh my goodness. I have totally done this in like romantic relationships where I kind of assimilate to their lifestyle, values, belief systems, even mannerisms. I've done this in like friendships as well, where I just kind of chameleon to the way they are and act and behave and do and believe and think. And, I've definitely sunk into those patterns, and it's a little scary, but I think it's just interesting. It kind of comes down to that desire to be loved, approved, and appreciated. And I think that the moment we can let ourselves go from those desires of those three things, the more freedom we can have and the more peace we'll have, because we're not fixated on that love, approval, and appreciation. Yeah, and I really think of people like Tony Robbins or David Goggins. I know they're good at boundaries because they accomplish so much. And if they were saying yes to everything that came their way, there's no way they would accomplish what they did. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because sometimes, as entrepreneurs, we kind of say yes to a lot of things because we're like, oh, like I gotta, say yes to all these opportunities. But I'm learning that if you focus on one thing and you just do that one thing over and over and over and over, you're kind of drilling at this hole of, there's like this wall between us and like success, right? And so if we're just drilling at this one spot on the hole, it'll break through. And so I really believe that's what, all my, I guess you could say, the people I look up to, right? I know that they're just so good at boundaries because I don't believe they could have made it that far if they were people pleasing. I think people pleasing really deviates from your purpose. I feel like people pleasing distracts you from accomplishing your goals. I really think it does. It really plays a huge tax on that energy that is so precious and limited in a day, right? And you can spend a lot of mental energy on like, I can't believe I said yes. Like, why did they ask me this? Da 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 da. And you can spend a lot of time on it, and it doesn't need to. Okay, so here's some practical tips for how to start using your voice. Number one, my favorite place to start, mind shift changes. So if we acknowledge the fear and the discomfort that comes with saying no, and emphasize the importance of reframing the fear, right? Okay, so what's the worst thing that will happen if I say no? If you're okay with that, you can move forward. If you're not okay with that worst case scenario, maybe there's a way to compromise, right? So, for example, my son's father and I, we share weekends, right? And so there's this constant like back and forth where I have to say like, I'm not comfortable with that. I really want to do that. How does this make you feel? And so there's this kind of coming to terms in the middle. And I think that there's a lot of scenarios that there is a give and take, right? And it's just important to voice, right? Voice, hey, like, I want to do this. How does that work for you? Well, I don't want to do this, but I want to do this. And so voicing what you want, I think, is very important. And acknowledging that we always can't get what we want, right? I think eventually, yes, but not all at once, right? And I think asking for everything that you want is so important. Everything, and don't leave anything behind. Voice it and have that long suffering, right? Like that impeccable patience to get what you want is so important. Here's also some practical small no's. So practice saying no, but like in small ways. Like, here's a good example. So if someone at work is like, hey, can you take a shift? You could say no. Or, if you're at, this is such a silly example. If you want to say no to like tipping someone, you could be like, no, mentally. But, well, like at a Jamba Juice, right? Or like at a Chipotle or like, something like that. Where it wasn't like a sit-down restaurant where they were giving you a service. Those are like small ways you could say no. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Tip your waitresses. I don't know about the kid behind the counter, but totally up to you. Also, yeah, having kind of like a set out way of saying no also really helps me to say no as well. I don't have the capacity for that right now. I'm going to pass, but thanks for thinking of me. Thanks for asking me. That doesn't work for me, but I appreciate the offer. So I think there's really kind ways to say no, and it doesn't have to come off unkind. Another practical tip is building assertive muscles. And it's the reason people pleasers have a hard time saying no is because they often say yes, right? They often try to find a way to make it happen. And saying no gets easier with time and with practice. And I'm telling you, you're going to find these weird ways that you're still people pleasing. Like either if it's with your body, with your nonverbals, and then there's going to be different aspects like in money, in relationships, in career. Like you're going to find these different aspects in your life that you're saying yes when you're wanting to say no. And I wanted to share this. I remember I wanted to share ways that we're people pleasing with our bodies. So I read this book called Cues, and she's talking all about like warm cues. So for example, when you head tilt, that expresses a vulnerable part of your body, the carotid artery. And then she also talks about like when to tilt your head. If you want to deliver bad news, you're interested in listening, to seem higher in warmth, to encourage someone to open up. When not to tilt your head. If you want to be seen as powerful, if you want to leave a conversation or stop someone from talking. So I find myself often like at the gym, people will come up to you and want to talk to you. The best way to stop them from conversating with you is to stop head tilting, stop nodding, and the nodding is vertical up and down, and then the smiles as well. So if you want someone to stop talking, then don't smile. If you want them to back off, don't smile. Also give them like space. You want to add space, or you want to add these like barriers in between you and them. Yeah, I think these are so cool. So there's so many nonverbals that we're doing, that we could be doing in our lives to help. But I also want to add, yes, add the body language, but yes, also add the voice, right? Voice with body. We're going to be saying no. Okay, so I also want to talk about the benefits of saying no. It's going to increase your authenticity. When you use your voice to say no, it's gonna empower you to be more honest, have more genuine relationships. And I also love what David Goggins said this weekend, where he was like, I love the man in the mirror. Like, I'm just so proud of him. And the person I built is my greatest asset. And I love that. Like, he doesn't people please within himself, right? It's like, yes, I want to sit on the couch and eat cookies and milk all day long, right? But like, if I'm giving into that voice, that's like my survival self, right? I don't want to be serving that self. I want to be serving the self that wants to serve and help and grow. And another benefit to saying no is the mental and emotional freedom. And when you say no, it creates a space for things that truly matter to you and leads to a greater life satisfaction, right? So if we go back to that example of the mom in Modern Family who was like super stressed about making these stupid cookies that she didn't even want to do in the first place. If she had just said no, the most uncomfortable thing that would have happened to her would be some fabricated story of what she's thinking about her, right? Which, a coach could easily help undo. But having that emotional freedom, I feel is so great. Have you ever said yes when you wanted to say no? Like, I want you guys to think about that moment for a second. When have you said yes to someone when you really wanted to say no? And that could be like my example, right? Where this lady was coming up to my kid and trying to touch him. And I was not saying no with my voice, but I was with my body. Or even there's sometimes where even like they'll be touching his hair and I just don't say anything, or I just like move my body, and sometimes I just like let it happen. And I'm like, I'm not proud of myself. I don't like myself. I actually shame myself quite a bit when I've let that happen. And it's just so important to say, don't touch my son. And then I'm really proud. I'm like, hey, like I'm sticking up for my kid. Like, I don't like this. I don't like what's going on. I need to speak to it. And then we're also not using our precious time and energy to do things that we don't want to do for other people. And here's what's kind of interesting is sometimes maybe religious dogma might say or argue like we need to be selfless. We need to be, good Christians. And that's why I love that Boundaries book, because he talks to that aspect of religion and Christianity. When you're being a people pleaser, you're being resentful, and that's a sin according to the Bible. And I really like the definition of sin where it's like translated correctly. It is to miss the mark. Like if you were to shoot an arrow and you miss the target, it's just a miss, right? And so when you're giving resentful, you're just you missed the mark, right? You missed the target. Desired action which would be to say no, because that's the authentic truth. No, I don't want to do what you're asking me. But here's what I can do. Here's what I am willing to do for you, right? No, I can't go to your event, but I can help promote it for you. No, I can't watch your kids, but I can give you a list of references I have. No, I can't watch your kids this weekend, but I can next weekend. So it's there's still definitely a place to be giving in a non-resentful way. And relationships benefit from boundaries because, one, there's no guessing. There's not this weird guessing game. There's not this, they should know what I'm thinking and feeling. And it's just clear. It's clear. It's concise. It's perfect. It's really nice. Okay. So I want to challenge you guys this week to say no to at least one thing that doesn't serve your priorities, and notice how it makes you feel. So whether that's like from your peers, from your spouse, from your friends, I want you guys to try to say no in some way. And I'm also going to take myself up on the challenge. Find ways in which you're saying yes when you really want to say no. And I want you to actually say no. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I hope it serves you. I hope it helps you live a life that's free of resentment, that's free of stress, and just more peace and freedom in your mind, and the freedom from desiring to be loved, approved, or appreciated. I would love it if you guys would rate this podcast 5 stars if you so desire. I would love it if you shared the podcast, share the episode. Please spread the word. It really, really helps. It really makes a difference. I also have some really exciting things coming up in the coaching programs other than, just like regular one-on-one coaching. I would love to be your coach if you're looking for a coach, especially in the topic of boundaries, because I have learned so many things from that. And I'm also soon doing a workshop series called Love Your Body. And within that, there's a lot of people pleasing as well. Like if you're going to parties or if someone offers you food that you set a goal to not eat or to eat less of, there's so much people pleasing that can go on with food and exercise and things that regarding health. So definitely want to give you guys an update on that. Definitely be giving guys more updates on how to sign up, when Love Your Body is going to be releasing. I'm hoping to have it done by the end of September. So keep in the loop. I will keep you guys in the loop. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Have a lovely, lovely rest of your day.